Welcome to the 1110 Leadership Podcast, where we tackle issues at the intersection of leadership, faith, and culture. I'm your host, Rob Shields, Vice President of Strategy at 1110 Leadership, and I'm joined by my co-host, founder and CEO of 1110 Leadership, David Spickard. Proverbs 1110 lays out a bold and countercultural vision. When the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. We're here to ask, what does it look like practically to be this type of leader? Leaders willing to invest everything they have so that everyone around them can thrive. Join us on the journey as we lean in, listen, and learn how to become Proverbs 11:10 kind of leaders. The kind of leaders that make our cities rejoice.
Hey, everybody. I'm excited about our episode today as we continue thinking about the first quality of a just leader, seeing the whole playing field. We just ended up last week talking about seeing the whole community. And I'm excited to share with you a previous interview I did with Pastors Ken and Beverly Jenkins, who are based just outside of St. Louis, Missouri, and their story as a result of what happened in Ferguson years ago when Michael Brown was killed by a police officer and the ensuing riots that took place there. And the story of how the community came together, business leaders, nonprofit leaders, church leaders, pastors, and many others, to develop a strategy for how the community would heal. And this really dovetails with what we talked about last week when we see the whole community and we have companies and organizations that we lead whose whole purpose is to make a community flourish and make it better and to heal the brokenness. And as many of us saw when those events took place and the riots took place all over the country, there was brokenness that needed to be healed. And Ken and Beverly were at the epicenter of this. And we have had a long relationship through my time at Jobs for Life. They are extraordinary leaders. What has happened through what they've put together with the R&R marketplace, which we describe on the interview, is nothing short of a miracle. So I hope you're inspired by hearing their story today. So Ken and Beverly, welcome.
It's good to be here.
Thank you guys for having us. Appreciate you.
So before I jump in and begin asking questions, let me just give some background. So Ken and Beverly have founded and are co-pastors of Refuge and Restoration Ministries in Ferguson, which is right outside of St. Louis. It is the community right next door to Ferguson, Missouri, and to Delwood, where all the activities took place, the riots and the protests as a result of Michael Brown being shot and killed by a police officer. That was in many ways just a flashpoint of how we think about issues related to race and police and their interaction with people in the community, and became such a story all over the world about how we navigate that. And so Ken and Beverly on the ground with that, and have been in the community for years and have perspectives that I think will be very enlightening for us as we think about what we need to see, using that as a backdrop for our conversation today. We had the opportunity to take a few of our leaders from our cohorts to see them last fall in October, to tour not only where everything happened, where Michael Brown was shot, but to meet with community leaders, to meet with business leaders, and to really understand what was going on behind the scenes, and then to see the extraordinary work that Ken and Beverly are leading, where they have founded and are directing the R&R marketplace, which is an extraordinary commercial development. And I don't want to give anything away, of hope and healing that is really meeting the needs that are present in the community that everybody needs to know about. But what I love about this is you have faithful people on the ground who don't get all the publicity or all the attention, but they're faithfully walking through this every day to create real change. So that's Ken and Beverly. So I've given a little bit of a picture for everyone, but really paint a picture for us of your work and your ministry? I know it's been a long time as you've been in the community, so I just would love to get a perspective of your work and how you guys are being used by God in the community.
That's a really good question. If we step back and sort of look at what we do, one of the things that have always resonated with me is that as believers, we're called to be righteous, right? We are the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ. And I hadn't paid much attention to this, but the literal translation for righteousness is equity. I mean, that is the definition of righteousness. So then if we really look at what we're all called to be, we're called to be equitable. And when you look at communities like Ferguson, Delwood, Baltimore, where I'm from, Gary, Indiana, what those communities lack is real equity. So when we talk about, so the picture of painting that picture, without even realizing it as believers, we're actually all called to the work, of equity and being equitable. And so that has been highlighted for me over these years in a different way, but it's always been there. I mean, it's always been, the mandate on the lives of believers is to walk in an equitable way towards everybody.
So Ken, you had a career in staffing and then decided to plant your church with Beverly, and then have continued to do a variety of things within the community over the years. So as you live that out of being the righteous and promoting equity, what motivated you to take that journey?
You want to?
I'll let you take that one.
Let me take it too. So what's motivated us? I think for us, well, I'll speak for me and Beverly can chime in. My walk personally, I didn't necessarily grow up in church. And so I used to always say that to live out this Christian life, Jesus had to be real to me. It had to be more than just what I read. It had to be more than just what, they told me in church or what my mom or anybody else said. Jesus had to be a reality, in my life. And that's really what has happened for me on a personal level, that my walk and relationship with Jesus Christ, it's real. It's not just duty or responsibility. And so that reality motivates me to live it out, beyond the church service, beyond, the title of being a pastor or minister. It's just who I am, right? It's like knowing Jesus for myself is really what, motivates me and understanding, my call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Beverly, what's been your motivation in the work that you guys have been doing?
Yeah.
And remind me, when did you start your church?
It's been, as long as 17 years ago. Yeah. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the assignment. So that's for me, the motivation is the call. It's the Jesus, of course, is the fuel behind everything that we're doing. We're not working out of our own will, but out of his assignment. And so that's the motivation for me. I don't think that we could continue this work the way that we're continuing it if it wasn't for the fact that we get up every day and we know this is the assignment. Like this is it. Like this is your life's work. And until that's completed, you feel a different sense of urgency, a different sense of commitment, resiliency. All those things play a factor in how you move forward. Or people are often asking us, why are you all, I mean, we get tired, we definitely get tired, but there's this motivation that pushes or forges you ahead, where you kind of like can press past, kind of like the marathon runner who you're like, gosh, when the Ironman happens and you're like, you're at mile 53 or whatever, are they going to make it? But there's something that bursts them into this space where they're like, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get to the finish line. And so it may not be the finish line, what we want to be the finish line, but the finish line that the Lord has set for us. And so that's definitely my motivation personally.
So we talk about what do we need to see in ourselves as we engage with this work of justice, that there are things that we need to be very self-aware.
Yeah.
We need to know ourselves and have a high EQ, emotional intelligence on ourselves. So what have you guys had to see in yourselves as you've engaged in your ministry?
I think what's really been important is seeing that you're the same as everybody else, right? Seeing that you need the exact same things that person, in a underserved community needs. That person who has, struggled with addiction. That person who struggled with behavioral health. Because what I really realize is that the trauma that they've experienced, we all experience some levels of trauma. And so the way we respond to it may be different. But when I hear the stories of people and some of the things they've been through, it's the fact that they're still standing is amazing, right? That you're going, wow, I don't know if I would still be able to take care of my family if I went through that, or if that happened to me. And so you realize that what you see in yourself is, man, we're the same. We're all the same.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Bev?
Yeah, it's very similar. I think that a lot of times when we're even talking to funders or to donors, because I think that sometimes the idea is that you're kind of apart from the people. But
right.
we've always gotten the word or understood that even in our pastoring, we don't pastor above the people, or we pastor among the people. And so it's like, it's a little bit. So we think about even like David, like he was a part of the sheep. Yeah, he knew that. Yeah, he had this dependency on Christ. Yeah. It's the same for us. Is that we're not looking at it from the perspective that, we're bringing some great things to you and we're coming to save you. No, we're pretty much in the same pot. We're like, we're saving ourselves.
Yeah.
We need saving too. So it's a big pot of, like, when you asked the question earlier about like what picture does it paint, and I'm so literal. Like I was like picturing this like beautiful field. It's so pretty, it's such a pretty painting, but there's people out there everywhere, like taking up all the spots in the land. Right. And then there's goo all over. It's messy. It's not orderly. It's not as cut and dry, as we would like it to be. So I think what I've seen in myself is that, cause I like order. I love order. I love things to go a certain way, and none of this work goes like that.
Right.
So what I've seen in myself, or what I've had to take away, is that, I've learned flexibility. I've learned a different kind of resiliency from the people, because they're flexible. Yeah. I mean, like their lives, like Ken talked about the trauma, like sometimes people's lives are up one day and then splattered the next day. And you're like, and I personally, I grew up country. And like really just straight country, but rural people have the same issues as people who are in inner city or urban communities. It's the same thing, but it's just that it's just how we navigate it. But that's what I've been learning, is that it's not cookie cutter, it's case by case, it's person by person, it's war by war, and it's victory by victory.
And when you guys talk about what you need, like you need the same things as the people you're leading, flesh out those things. What are the things that you found that you really need that are similar to those that you're leading?
Yeah, backing. The work that we're doing is really about the disinvestment that's in the community, not just with dollars, but disinvestment in value of human people. And so we need that. Like we need that investment as well as they do. That investment that says that you're worth it, that that just like Jesus died for me, you're worth it, that you have a value that's beyond just the amount of money that people are going to pump into a community. We need that too. We need that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because as we keep saying that we're like the poster child for the people in the community that this work is impacting, because being an African American, in society, this fight is national. This fight is not just about Ferguson. It's trying to communicate and tell that story that, having equitable access to, like, for instance, we live in a community where there are no primary care providers, right? So,
Barely.
barely.
Like,
If we could find three, like remember when Abraham was asking God if you find a few righteous folk,
care physicians.
And most people would take that for granted. But we need primary care physicians too. Why should I have to drive 40 minutes, right, to go see my doctor? Little with the grocery store, healthy food access. It's rare. We go to find like a Whole Foods or those kinds of places, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so they talk about food insecurity. If we didn't, have cars and stuff, we'd be eating at Quick Trip too.
Right.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Most definitely.
So what are the needs that you're finding in the people that you are walking with? Describe what you are needing to respond to, that they're facing, the obstacles, the challenges that they're having to overcome. What are some of those?
Yeah. It's broad. It's just a gamut of things. Workforce development is one. It's the access to employment that is not just minimum wage, access to employment, access to the education that brings you to employment that is not just minimum wage. Those things are very needed in the community. Transportation to get to the access to education, to get to the access to those jobs that are above minimum wage. And so there's a gamut of things. Healthy food access is a big deal in places that it really shouldn't be. Because when we think about the proximity of where, like even a Dalewood or a Ferguson is, the proximity is right. We're 10 minutes up the road from Florissant, which Florissant is a thriving community that has the same per capita income as one of the wealthier areas inside of St. Louis, one of the suburbs of St. Louis. But yet 10 minutes away, there is this lack of resources, lack of, like you said, the healthy food options. There's even near Florissant, there's not a Whole Foods, there's not a Trader Joe's, there's not those kind of accesses. But those are just like some of the things that that are needed.
And basic things. So for instance, it's 52,000 people in the community we live in. We don't even have a movie theater.
Right.
Like basic stuff. We got to drive across town to go to the movie. It's things like that is often taken for granted in community, whether it be banking, we have more payday loans than almost any place in the country, to access to capital. It's just a gamut, behavioral health, mental health services. They're starting to really address that, but it's 2022, right? This stuff's been here, access to childhood education. We know, quality, We were reading a report the other day, just nationally, it's $83 billion in wages lost in the community, particularly impacting Black and brown people because they don't have access to early childhood education. So they take jobs that give them the flexibility to work odd hours, and those jobs are generally about $12 an hour. And it's not that the people don't have the skill set or talent to work better jobs.
That's right.
It's just that because there's no access for this early childhood education, it causes them to have to pivot or take positions that they're overqualified for. $83 billion wage loss impact. That's unacceptable.
Stress.
You guys are so close to the need, and you have the lived experience that allows you to have empathy and compassion for those you serve. What would you say to those people who are not close to the need and don't have the same lived experience? What are the biggest misunderstandings of people who are sort of on the outside looking in? I know, Ken, you're leading a Bible study or with some business leaders from outside the community who've been sort of more interested in knowing how to connect to the community, and therefore got invited to this Bible study and keep coming. And you're starting to see that be a bridge for that, right?
Yeah.
Both of you are in your positions. You serve as a real bridge from where you are to those who are coming around you to support your work. What are those biggest misunderstandings of those who are on the outside looking in?
That's a great question. Actually, I was in a meeting yesterday And we were kind of having this conversation. And so our daughter, very intelligent young lady, she's a neurobiologist. And we were talking about her. And in the midst of the conversation, the questions were really good. The guy I really liked. We were talking. But the perspective is that someone like my daughter, she's 25, is different than the other people in the community her age that may be struggling, that may have children out of wedlock, that may have the minimum wage jobs. And so the question came up about the difference. And I kept saying my daughter's the same as them. The difference is she had support. She had access to things that they didn't, that because of our positions as pastors and what we've been able to do, we could expose her. I've talked about how when she was in high school, we sent her to Harvard to this medical camp, where we, raised the funds and she was able to go. But it's exposure, seeing things, believing things different. The talent and skill set of people that are broken is not any different than somebody that's successful. It's not like this person is successful because they were just so much smarter and so much talented, and so that's one of the things that we try to articulate over and over and over again, that the people that you see in underserved communities and communities that have experienced great trauma has nothing to do with their intelligence and talent,
Nothing.
Their skill set, absolutely nothing. And so that's a hard fight sometimes, because often perception is, well, these folk don't want to work. They don't want to do this, but again, I go back to trauma. Man, when you've experienced great trauma over and over and over and over again, because the policing issue came up in Ferguson and all the reports, when you see the kid who's the A student get pulled over or even shot or those kind of things, and they're the good one, right? It causes the other folk to check out. So,
like he didn't make it.
Yeah.
How do we make it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'll never forget when you guys first invited me out to Ferguson after all the events that took place with Michael Brown and the riots. I was sitting next to a older woman on the plane. She asked me where I was going, and I said, well, I'm going to Ferguson. And she said, oh my gosh, I would never go to Ferguson. How could you possibly want to go there? And then when I got there and you guys showed me around, the very first thing that I was taken by was all the signs in everybody's yards that said, I love Ferguson, I love Ferguson.
Yeah.
And it looked nothing like all the perceptions and all the pictures and everything. It was just nothing. How would you describe, your community in terms of, from that perspective, things that people don't see, which would make them love it, right? Want to be there, see the value of it, that often, again, we have a misunderstanding or we overlook because of the other messages that are conveyed to us, whether we're there or like me outside the community and watching it on TV.
Yeah. I know for me, and Ken probably can chime in a little bit more, because his family is in Ferguson and Dalewood. That's where majority of the family resides, and also our congregation. So all along that corridor is most of the people that are made up of our church is in that area, in that region. And so one thing that kind of resonates with me is that people want to know that they're needed, and this community is full of people who lock arms in solidarity. I mean, every day. The reason why you can see all those cards in the yard that said, I love Ferguson, is that during the protest and during all that time that people were protesting, they were protecting people's property. One of the properties that the people in the community band together to protect was our sister-in-law's restaurant. She didn't even know it. She was at home and got a phone call that, hey, they're trying to loot the restaurant or trying to tear down the windows in the restaurant. And people literally locked arms and held each other so that, no, you're not going to touch this particular restaurant. You're not going to, they didn't want to touch any of them, but Kathy's was sacred to them because they felt like she had contributed a lot to the community and she had been a stakeholder in the community. And not only that, but the same place that the police ate the same place that the community ate. They ate together there. Now, some days it felt like Foghorn Leghorn, right? Where like you go in a restaurant, you eat together, you hang out together, and then you go out. It's just, but it's community though, which that's what I mean about that messy picture. It's like, it's like, yeah, hey, we are in disagreement with the way that you're handling things, but we still love you. And that's the community that most people don't see from the outside. I thought it was really the oddest thing. I was in a restaurant, and I never forget, I looked up on the screen, and in Tiananmen Square was a picture of Ferguson on their big screen in Tiananmen Square. And I thought, this is bananas, that the whole world, but in a way, it was bananas, but it was also a great thing, because I was like, the whole world is watching St. Louis. The whole world is looking at St. Louis and saying, what will you do? How will you answer to this? Not necessarily the action of it, but how will you answer? Mm-hmm. And I think that we're coming up on a space where we're learning how in community to not necessarily look to the outside to heal, which is really good. This community definitely looks to the inside to heal. And I appreciate that about Ferguson, Dalewood, Jennings, all that area has done a tremendous job of pulling together and being a real community. They really have.
That's so good. Looking inside to heal, because there's been a lot of outside resource, right? A lot of people who've come in to offer help or to come in with even an agenda or lots and lots of money. But if it's not really the community from within that's providing the solution, you have a hard time solving the ultimate problem.
Absolutely.
And just to give folks who are listening some context, so in St. Louis, there are 95 municipalities in and around St. Louis, something along those lines. And so when we talk about Ferguson, Dalewood, Jennings, these communities, they're right next to each other. I mean, you can drive down the street and go for a mile and a half or two, and you're in all three. You're in all three of them. So the project that you guys are working on, R&R Marketplace, is in Dalewood, which is right next to Ferguson. So much of the looting and the riots actually happened in Dalewood, along with Ferguson too, because they're just right next to each other. Yeah. Am I right about that?
Yeah, yeah. And just so you all know, just to give a little bit more context too, is that a lot of that looting came from people who were from different states. Yeah. The people of the community were just dumbfounded. They were like, this is not happening to our city. Like, this is not what's taking place, because a lot of times people come from the out, of course, like you said, with their own agendas, but the looting and those kind of things were not from the citizens. That was not what took place there. And I think that's one thing that people should know, is that the citizens were not part of that destruction of their own community. It was outsiders who came in to do that.
Yeah, they were arresting people that were here all the way from Texas,
California.
I mean, it was, and they didn't talk about it in the news, but it was, quite a few people that just came in and saw an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. So your project. So we've talked all, during this time to be leaders who see in ourselves, see what we need to see in the people that we're leading. And then you guys have painted a really great picture of the community. That then gives you the fuel and the wisdom and the perspective to figure out, okay, then how do we move forward and create solutions and take action that's really going to meet the needs of the community. So when did this vision take shape? I mean, you talked earlier, Bev, about the assignment.
Yeah.
And getting up because you have an assignment. I think all of us listening might go, how do I find out my assignment? What's my assignment? And how come their assignment is so clear and mine is so unclear, so gray? Come on, guy, give me my assignment. How did this form for you guys? And give us time frame and just some things. I know it's been a journey, so start to give us some perspective on that.
Yeah, I'm going to let you share it, and then I'll just chime in.
That's a really, really good question, because I think first, when we think about assignments and vision and God, I think first it begins with the pursuit of God. it's like a lot of times we're pursuing an assignment, looking for something, but it's when you pursue God and you get a hold of God, then he gives you what it is that that work may be, or what that assignment is. And so I would say it starts with, really being in pursuit of him, because this work we're doing wasn't because we saw the community like, oh, we need to help the community, we need to do this. That wasn't it. It was really more about just with everything in us, we just wanted to, serve the Lord. We just want to do what God is asking of us to do. And that there unfolded the work. And so that's what started. I think Bev and I, we talk a lot about just, wanting to live our life for the Lord and do what God is asking of us. And so but we probably had to give any, initial information, about, okay, what's my assignment? How do I find it? Don't look for that. Right.
Yeah.
I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but that was not what we did. We weren't out there going, God, what did we do? What's our job? That wasn't the approach at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it starts with it's really interesting because I'm a natural dreamer. Like I just dream and write and dream and write and dream and write. And I think that people, when you do that, I think people take for granted their dreams. Just dream it, pin it, right? Write it down. It doesn't matter. If it's just wacky or weird or too far out there, just do it anyway. Just write it out, And I think so then God then hones in on that dream, and then he turns it into vision. And he brings clarity or cuts the fat is what I call it, And so, I've got 1,000 things that I dream about on a daily basis.
So if I'm looking for an assignment, I can't find it, I'll just ask you, Bev. You just dream it up for me.
Books and books.
Okay.
She's written out.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you guys, this commercial property have been sitting dormant, empty for 20 years?
Yeah.
Right in Delwood. It had been a shopping center, and you talk about disinvestment. Some of us come from communities like ours here in Raleigh, where the idea of disinvestment is something we're not experiencing. We're experiencing the exact opposite, where values of properties and people are getting pushed out because of all of it, and the competition is crazy for real estate, both residential and commercial. But you guys are in a situation where you have this vacant building in Delwood that has been empty for 20 years, and then you started to hone in on it, right? So give us a sense of how everything began to form with the project.
Yeah.
I think as we, so Beverly, she talked about all the stuff she had written out, and, she had God downloaded that in her. And we began to talk about it, and some other things took place. But I think as we began to really embrace, okay, this is what God is saying. This is the thing that God has given us to do. We just started to take those steps. I think it started with because a lot of times people don't think about the initial, just inquiring about the building. Okay, it's been vacant. Let's start talking to people. Having these conversations. And it really is one step at a time. I think people don't go after dreams or do things because they just see this big old thing, right? Mm-hmm. But I like the way Chris said it to me. He said it's a chunk, a chunk, a chunk, a chunk. It's
Chris, your son.
Yeah, my son.
Your son, Chris.
One bite at a time. And he said, no, it's a chunk, a chunk, a chunk, a chunk. And so
yeah.
It's cool thinking back. I remember in prayer. So, we're praying, and still today we're praying about what's the next step. What do we do? And the Lord would place names on our heart. And it would be a person that we felt like the Lord was saying, go tell them the vision. So we go do that. And they will go, oh, I was praying and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I'm in this position. I want to use it to have impact in the community. And then they would say, I want you to meet so-and-so. Mm. So we would go to the next meeting, and it literally hasn't stopped. right? So you'd be praying and somebody would say, we were just wondering, how we can get involved in the community. But I want you to meet these other couple of people. We all were talking. You go meet them and they say the same thing. And so it just has become the norm. But it's, the one day at a time, like God told the children of Israel before they went into the promised land. He says, I'm going to give this to you little by little, because, God gives it to you all at once. It's going to overwhelm you. It's going to overtake you. So it's been little by little. Yeah. We can handle little by little. You can't handle it all at once. And it makes it more palatable.
Right. That's so wonderful.
Palatable, yeah. Doable, attainable, achievable. Yeah. So when did you begin that process? How long ago was that?
Now so on the ground, probably about 8 years ago. So now we're in our 8th year of working on this and working in.
And what was your original vision?
Yeah, so the original vision is still the same vision today. So I'm going to tell you the piece that got added was at a lunch party, but the original vision was to co-locate these services of collaborators and partners and all these different entities to, of course, bring about equity and to reverse disinvestment. Like that was the whole mission of it. But the components were how the Holy Spirit gave it to us was they were pillars. And these pillars were these things that we knew were the only things that the Lord gave us that would bring about equity, an equitable change for people. Mm-hmm. And that was early childhood education. We're also going to have an employment training center there that would bring about those kind of changes and transformation in community as well. And then entrepreneurship, which is a big deal in all communities. Mm-hmm. But in our community specifically, everyone has a side hustle. I mean, everybody's got some side job that they're doing, no matter what 9 to 5 they're working or 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. There's always something else that they're doing. And so we wanted to put capacity around those entrepreneurs and see that flourish. And of course, the church was a pillar or is a pillar in the project. And then financial services or banking services. So those 5 components were the pieces that we put together, I don't want to give us credit because it really is the Lord's vision. But these were the components that the Holy Spirit said to us would bring about equity and bring about change. What came along later was a young lady was at a lunch party and she said, there's one component that's missing. We were up telling our speech and talking about our 5 pillars. And she was like, y'all don't have health in there, health. And we felt like all of these components brought about change for all the social determinants of health, but specifically health in itself was not inside of our pillar structure. And so we brought on a 6th pillar, which is the behavioral health and then addiction services. So that piece is now in there as well. So that wasn't in the original vision, but that got added later. But those are the components of all of what will be inside of that plaza in the marketplace.
Yeah. So I remember, Ken, you called me and you told me this vision, and then you said we have to raise X million dollars in order for this to happen. I can't remember the number at the in that original phone call. It might have been 5 to 8. I can't remember in that original call, $5 to $8 million. And you said, I've never raised any money before. How are we going to raise this money? And I don't know why you came to me. And so I pulled out a little, what can I tell Ken? What can I tell Ken?
That's awesome.
Just to give you a little bit of hope. So you had this amount of money that was before you too, just the logistics of pulling this off. It's not just the money, but it's a lot of complexity, finding the partners, figuring out the design of the building, buying the building from an owner who may not be easy to work with.
Yeah.
So how did all those pieces start to happen? And God began to provide, particularly even on the money side, when it seemed, I don't know if it seemed overwhelming to you guys, because I don't see you guys being people who get overwhelmed because of your faith and trust in God. But how did you start to do those chunks and those bites that allowed you to get to this point?
It's when we were in the midst of it, I think it was just going, I don't want to say so fast, but I don't think we were thinking about it that way, right? Like, we knew there were needs, but we also had decided in this process that we were okay if it didn't happen. Like that sounds, we were like, this is God's project. We don't have the capacity to do it. Certainly don't have the money. And even the technical skills that were needed. We didn't know architects. We didn't know any developers. We didn't know any of these folk. And so, again, our dependency was completely on God. Our prayers were like, well, God, they say we need this, so you're going to have to send it or send a person. Mm-hmm. And one of the coolest stories were we first started looking at the building before we bought it. We needed to look at the building. And it was an issue where we needed roofing and AC. We was like, okay, we didn't know air conditioners cost as much, commercial AC. So we were praying. And in prayer, the Lord just placed upon my heart to call one of our good friends, Junior. And so I called him, and just out of obedience, and said, hey, we need somebody to look at this. Do you know anybody? And he goes, Pastor, do you know what I do? I said, I have no idea what you do. Well, you own a commercial HVAC company. He said, I'll go out today. So he went out, brought a friend. They looked at the roof, gave us an estimate on the HVAC. And so this is literally how all these things came together. And that was pretty cool because, we're really good friends with Lou. But we had no idea. We knew who his dad was, we had met Luke actually through a Jobs for Life class. He came, somebody had invited him, and we just kind of hit it off and connected. And this was some years ago. And so it's things like this. So, same thing with donors. We didn't know who were like this affluent person or this person, would give or this foundation or this. We didn't know any of that stuff. But God just kept sending people. Somebody would say something like, well, somebody told me about this project. I'm interested. And they would come down and they would just like, we want to give money. And we would say, okay. Yeah. And then they would give what the scripture says, exceeding abundantly above more than you can ask. Right? Because I don't think we would have ever asked anybody for, hey, can you give us $1 million? Or we would have never done that.
Not personal friends. We would have been like, that's weird.
Right.
Like, you don't ask your friends for money. And so but our friends have been phenomenal in this. Like, we haven't had to ask, and they've been like, hey, this is what we're doing. Yeah. And this is why we're doing it. And it's kind of like how you say to people, like, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's like, that's how that's been for us. And so,
wow.
Yeah.
You've led with vision. And the funding, the resources, the partners have followed that vision. Mm-hmm. So when did you close on the property and have the celebration? When was that?
So we closed on the property September of 2021, September 27th, actually, 2021. We signed the paperwork on Juneteenth, which is absolutely amazing. Like we had no idea that was going to fall that way, but we signed the paperwork on Juneteenth. And we had our groundbreaking in October, and it was the most beautiful groundbreaking. A lot of people were there, but it was, I think, even the feedback we got from people who were politicians and just some of the biggest thinkers in St. Louis were like, this is the most amazing groundbreaking I've ever been to. And It was beautiful. It was a beautiful multicultural site, but it was also every demographic you could think of, from people who are struggling to make it to people who are just, off the charts wealthy. And so it was just an amazing thing to have all of that come together in one place. And that's the picture of what the marketplace is supposed to be in the future. That's, as well.
So great. So great. 7.5 years later, right?
Yeah.
From the very beginning.
Yeah.
And again, a picture of faithfulness, how this takes time and how you have to see, right? You have to see at the beginning and allow even God to enable you to see a vision, and then begin to work that out over time.
Yeah.
Well, I hate that our time is up. We could keep on going. Can you believe it? We're already at our time.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, Ken and Bev, thanks so much for just being with us today. Appreciate your friendship and your continued model for me. I'm just, as I mentioned at the beginning, you guys have modeled what it looks like to be faithful, what it looks like to really care and have compassion, and then use your gifts and talents to be bridge builders that provides real hope and healing to your community. And it's not just your community, it's the communities outside of where you are, because we all need that community. We all need that partnership. We all need those relationships. We all need to see a big picture of what God can do, experience His fullness. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You as well.
Okay, take care.
To learn more about 1110 Leadership, visit our website at 1110leadership.com. That's the numerals 11, then spelled out TEN leadership.com. That's 11 TEN leadership.com. There you'll find more resources to equip you on the journey of becoming an 1110 leader. You can also get connected to our growing leadership network. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. To help others find us, you can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.